my great pleasure to welcome to our 2023 Online Trend Summit, Megan van Someren, Chief Commercial Officer of the Jamie Oliver Group. We're going to be talking about the Jamie Oliver brand, how it's acting on and activating the broader trends in food and drink, as well as social, cultural, all of those movements that are happening at the moment. We're going to talk about purpose, growth pillars, how to balance a commercial and social impact model, of course, the enduring appeal and relevance of Jamie Oliver, and much, much more. Megan, it is an absolute pleasure to welcome you to our virtual Trend Summit today.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Great. If you're joining today's summit as a Trend Hub subscriber, you can discover more about the topics covered in this discussion in our 24-25 food and drink trends framework, particularly on those mega trends that we've called savvy living, simply delicious, and empowered self, as well as, of course, the wider cuisines and ingredients trends framework on Trend Hub. So without further ado, Megan, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you, Charles. So just to reiterate, my name is Megan van Someren. Not only am I the Chief Commercial Officer at the Jamie Oliver Group, but I am a self-proclaimed food geek. And as the Chief Commercial Officer in my role, what I'm responsible for in the business is looking after, first and foremost, our product and partnerships business. So we have a lot of exciting work in terms of new categories that we're exploring, innovation, but also strategic brand partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
I look after our entire brand experience. So looking after things like digital and marketing. We have some really exciting plans that I will touch upon in terms of sort of the future of the digital experience for the Jamie Oliver brand, but also, which is very close to my heart and many of the hearts of the people within the organization, is our social impact and sustainability. So I'll talk about the very critical role that plays within the business. But let me just start by talking a little bit in terms of not only where the business has been, but we're on a really exciting trajectory for where we're going. And we're putting down sort of a very clear kind of signal of what it means to be first an ambitious commercial brand and business, but having that strong social heartbeat and threading that through everything we do, which is very much what Charles had set up. But I think what's really important is the kind of legacy and the credibility of what Jamie and the business has built over the last 20 years. So the fact that, I often think about Jamie as sort of the OG of food can make a difference in the world.
Absolutely.
And so, to think about this timeline of these incredible moments, campaigning moments, restaurant moments, moments where we really, the brand, the business, Jamie has been able to demonstrate that there is a better way, that food can really shine a light and improve people's lives. And it's really building from that rich legacy and that credibility and that trust that it brings, that we're in an exciting moment in time in terms of defining what does the next chapter look like for the Jamie Oliver brand and the Jamie Oliver business. So there's been a number of kind of changes, evolution, new people joining the business. So I joined within the last 18 months. We also have a new CEO in Kevin Stiles. And one of the opportunities that we really saw was this moment to kind of really ask ourselves, what is the business we want to be for the next 20 years? Yeah. And the opportunity to kind of move away from maybe just being media first and kind of celebrity focused, but hearkening back to all of the rich legacy work that's been done and really building toward what it means to be an integrated food business today. And really looking at the superpowers across the business, media and the role that it plays to inspire and touch people's lives, restaurants, the opportunity to continue to connect with people in more intimate settings, glean insights, experiment a little, understand what's trending from a flavor and a format perspective. But then bringing that into people's homes and enabling those experiences in home and making it more accessible. But then also, obviously, from a Ministry of Food perspective, it's about creating that legacy. It's about creating that lasting change. And so I want to talk a little bit about kind of each of these pillars, but also, quite importantly, that what sits in the center of all this, what it means to really deliver on the promise of improving upon and driving more joy into the mealtime moment. And we'll deconstruct that a little bit more.
Fantastic.
But the other thing that I think is important to note, and I think you mentioned this as well in the introduction, is that just the sheer reach and the global impact that this brand has achieved over the last 20 plus years. So you're looking at, over 50 million books sold worldwide. We have a robust audience across all of our social channels, our .com, but we're, 35 broadcast titles across 182 territories. website visitors, restaurants, and the guests that we're able to serve, over 9 million by the end of this year. But it's also the way we are able to tell stories and connect with people. So award-winning Emma, BAFTA award-winning teams, and an understanding of how to tell stories that feel human, but also bring utility and practicality. And I think that's really, really important. And hopefully, again, a theme that we'll touch upon on this. So part of the kind of reset moment that we've had was not only looking at sort of what does the next 5 years look like from a business point of view, but really understanding the power of the brand. And I have worked pretty much across every category in food and across many of, multinational global food brands. But the sheer kind of privilege to go in and do research on a brand like the Jamie Oliver brand has been really eye-opening. First, you see these levels of awareness, right? So, fairly global in terms of 98% awareness in the UK, similar in Australia, but even in markets like Germany and the US, significant levels of awareness. But also what's been so sort of enlightening and exciting for us is the consistency of what the brand is associated with and how the brand shows up in the way that it touches people's lives. And so again, the passion, the knowledge, that accessibility, the creativity, the fun factor. Yeah. These are the personality attributes that consistently we are hearing across all of these markets, but also the associations. Jamie as a chef and the credentials that he brings, but the champion for healthier, more sustainable eating, the role that he plays from a food education point of view, but also always about sort of simplicity and making it easy for people. And I always love this quote from one of the researchers that we've worked with, this sort of bish, bash, bosh style that Jamie brings. It really invites people to get into their kitchens and to cook. So these are just some headlines from all of this. I think, some part of the research we also wanted to understand was just people's relationship with cooking. And I'm assuming that a lot of the trends that you guys are going to be covering off will hopefully reinforce some of this. Yeah. But people are continuing to cook, right? And there's actually pretty positive levels, and enjoyment around the notion of cooking. So, in the US, over 80% are feeling positive about the idea of cooking, but they are still looking for inspiration. They need those kind of time-saving shortcuts and hacks. They're always looking for versatility. Same numbers in Australia, similar in terms of across the UK. So there's an enjoyment factor. But even if that it's particular in Australia, people are making it a priority to cook at home. What we're seeing is that, yes, it's for the practical, it's for the economic, but it's also because cooking can be a means to connect. It can be a means to self-express, creativity, even things for relaxation and sort of meditation. Maybe not so much on a Tuesday when you're trying to get food on the table within 30 minutes or less, but there are moments and different roles that kind of cooking can play in our lives. And I think that's really important for us because part of the process that we were undergoing from a brand point of view is really thinking about how do we serve people's needs in those mealtime moments and acknowledge that what we need on a weeknight might be different from a weekend, or, if we're particularly stressed or we're trying time poor, or we've got to put food on the table for our family versus maybe a connective moment for friends, there's going to be slightly different needs. Yeah. And so we think about kind of the mealtime moment. What our research really validated is this constant compromise that we're in, right? Whether it's time, whether it's cost, whether it's something delicious, something healthy, something that feels exciting and novel, or something that everybody's going to love and is tried, true, and tested. And so it's each time for people, that kind of mealtime moment brings some of those tensions. And the opportunity for us, and Jamie always talks about this, like, how can we just be useful? How can we serve people? And it's serving that need for having those various tensions to navigate, and just making sure we can show up with solutions that allow people to navigate that compromise. Yeah. So we talk a lot about this because it helps ensure that we're relevant as a brand and as we develop solutions. And so we took a lot of that great research. We took a lot of that great insight just in terms of the mealtime moment. We've done a lot of work in terms of understanding our target audiences. And we pulled together sort of our brand on a page, right? This is our brand strategy. And it really always starts with the purpose. And this is the purpose of the brand, but it goes back again to that very initial timeline that I shared, which is kind of what Jamie's purpose has been all along. How do we help inspire, enable a healthier and happier world but do it through the joy of food.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, and again, I've worked at so many different food businesses, and we've seen some amazing examples where businesses and food can be very purpose driven, but sometimes it walks a fine line to being too worthy, too serious, and too inaccessible. So you're going to see the joy come through, because that enjoyment piece is a means to make it feel easy for people to achieve. We talk about our target audience as our active cooks. So whether it's a busy cook or somebody who really loves the act of cooking, our cooking lovers, but also our food socials. So these could be cohorts and groups of people who are much more around connecting in more traditional ways, friends and family around a meal and around a dining table, or in more social ways. So it could be those that are much more around staying on top of trends and much more around sensory experiences. And what's great is, as we kind of opened up the aperture a little bit in the types of, it's not just cooking that we solve for, but it's also about how people connect with food and food experiences. It allows us to kind of build out the 4 pillars of the business that I shared at the onset to serve the needs of those types of audiences. The need state we talked about. So again, it's really understanding kind of those tensions and trade-offs across the mealtime moment. We talk a lot about scratch-ish cooking, and we really believe that there's such power and so much benefit from getting people in the kitchen more often. And actually, it doesn't matter if it's really opening up a few prepackaged items and putting it in a pan and stirring it up and adding a little bit of flavor and a little bit of zhuzh to it. That's a shortcut. That's simple hacks that are still making you, hopefully engaging you in the process of cooking, creating more confidence, and putting, whether it's healthier meals, more sustainable meals, or just more enjoyable meals on the table. But everything that we do, as I mentioned before, ladders up to this promise that in that mealtime moment, we want to bring something better, healthier, more sustainable, more joyful to those meals. And it's very intentional, that mealtime being kind of the frame of reference that we really operate in. It could be in home, it could be out of home, but it's really the area that what we feel the brand can serve people in the most credible way. And the other exciting piece was these reasons to believe. And this is, again, it kind of goes back to some of the headlines of the research that I shared, is that there were 3 things that kept coming through, and that really we believe are the magic ingredients of the Jamie Oliver brand. First is that reliability, that solution provider mindset, staying one step ahead of people's needs, whether it's, 1 pound wonders where you have minimal cleaning up or 5 ingredients or less. It's just making sure that we are providing solutions for people. You layer on, though, chef credentials, flavor, expertise, innovation, then all of a sudden you're creating these practical solutions that bring that joy, bring that excitement. But then the third, which again is what we believe is truly, truly differentiating, is the trust and the integrity that comes from all the work that's been done consistently over the last 20 years to make a change, make a difference, and use the joy of food in order to achieve that. So that's the kind of the brand, the direction, which we're all very excited about as we move forward. And now I wanted to just talk a little bit about how we put all of that into action. So with our key global growth pillars, we have the 4 kind of areas that I talked about in the upfront. So with our media business, we have the launch of our fast channels. We obviously have all of the books that we talked about, but also rather excitingly, we have entered into the e-learning space. So lots of opportunities for us to touch more people, but through digital platforms and bringing to life kind of all that Jamie can do in terms of inspiring more confidence in the kitchen. Our restaurant business, as I mentioned, has given us an incredible opportunity through our franchise business, which has been going strong internationally. And now we are launching back into the UK with an owned and operated restaurant for Jamie Oliver, Catherine Street. And it allows us to bring, again, that kind of innovation and experimentation around food experiences. Within the restaurant business, we also have our cookery school, which is also an incredible opportunity for us to touch people, teach people, and give them really, really exciting and fun ways for them to learn more, whether it's knife skills, whether it's about certain cuisines. And it really is an incredible way for people to truly experience the brand. Product and partnerships. So we, and I'll touch upon this a little bit more, but we've got a 20-year partnership with Tefal. And so really looking at that cookware proposition. We have categories within food today. And this is an area where we've got a lot of new innovation and some new categories that we're going to be exploring for the future as well. So definitely watch the space in that area. And then social impact, as I mentioned, Ministry of Food is really kind of the anchor brand for us in terms of bringing to life all of the impact work that we've been able to achieve over the last 15 years. We are proud to be a certified B Corp. And actually last year, we launched the inaugural Good School Food Awards, which was an amazing opportunity for us to shine a light on all of the heroes within the school food system. And again, I'll touch upon that a little bit more. But as I mentioned, it's the power of these kind of 4 areas of the business and how they come together, allowing us to be a truly integrated food business and food brand. And when we think about, all of those kind of areas of the business, it really is the way we can unlock both the commercial as well as the social impact. And as I mentioned before, and this very much comes from the values of Jamie, but the values of the brand as well. How do we serve people? How do we stay on top of their needs? And there are kind of 3 ways and filters that we always use as we think about how we optimize what we're doing, but also how we plan for the future. The first is, how are we inspiring a better way to enjoy that mealtime moment? And that could be healthier solutions, more sustainable solutions. It could also be about what's happening in culture. So in the midst of rising prices and cost of living, how are we stepping up and adapting to that? The second is about enabling behavior change and enabling that behavior change in home. So how are we understanding kind of those barriers from across the entire cooking continuum so that we're getting and helping people cook and experiment more, get more confident in the process, but also just simply enjoying their moments together. And then the third is, how are we fighting for more access and for more people? And how are we looking at that through the filters of schools, which is a huge area of focus, as many of you know, but also communities and workplaces. So I'm going to dive into these a little bit further. So I think, again, as I mentioned, at the sort of the heart of all of it is us as a business and as a brand being committed to always serving people. And we have so many levers that we can pull, as I looked at those and sort of touched upon the kind of 4 pillars of the business. So if we look back at just some of the recent activity, the cookery school is such an incredible asset for us to really reach people in those sort of intimate environments. So over the past year, we were able to welcome 172 local school children, giving them free cooking classes and free cooking lessons, but also in order to really serve some of the pressures that the NHS specifically was feeling, was we launched a 4-part series of 4 classes to really enable, and hopefully serve some of their needs in terms of upping their game from a cooking and in a food education perspective. I mentioned before the fact that we were able to quite quickly respond to all of the pressures that we were feeling in terms of rising inflation and cost of living. It was really interesting. We had launched last year £1 Wonders. Mm-hmm. And it was during the interview process that I think it was one of the interviewers misheard Jamie, and they thought he said One Pan Wonders was the book we launched. They thought he said £1 Wonders. And it was at that point he was like, genius. Yeah. I think it was about maybe 4 weeks later, we were in conversations to create a TV series called £1 Wonders to respond not only to the pressures that we were seeing, but also to really serve people and make sure that we were creating solutions, which ultimately touched 1.4 million people through that TV series. We created then on the back end of that a whole recipe collection that were £1 recipes. We worked with Trussell Trust to distribute that. And then we also had that on our own website, with 500,000 people accessing it. So again, it was just, we were able to take a very successful concept in our £1 Wonders and make sure that we were adjusting and adapting that to the very real cost of living need. We're also very focused on helping people make sustainable choices. So that's why 60% of our content across all of our channels is either meat-free or meat-reduced. And we have a whole host of ideas for people to really think differently about leftovers and food waste. We not only do this about specific ingredients, so how do you use ripe tomatoes, but also around Christmas, for instance, and how do you really reimagine, what your leftovers are in key holiday seasons. And then finally, we want to make sure that in that product pillar that we're really enabling some of those choices through the products and the partnerships that we have. And so, we're proud to really think about how many portions and plan how many portions we're able to deliver through our fruit and veg that we're able to deliver through our products. And I mentioned this with our 20-year partnership with TFAL, and across a whole range of our products and solutions and content offerings. Ultimately, it's about inspiring more of those scratch-ish cooking, however people define that. And so really giving them, ideas that maybe take a little bit more time and allow for them to lean into the creativity and the expression and the confidence and the learning side of things. Or it could be, give me those quick hacks, give me those shortcuts. Yeah. And really making sure that we're serving people across that continuum. The other piece that I mentioned before that I really wanted to make sure we delved into was the whole idea around how we can be a champion for delicious, nutritious meals and making that really accessible for as many people as possible. So one of the things that we've been in the process of doing as well over the last 6 to 12 months is kind of reimagining all of the incredible campaigning work that we have done over the last 15 plus years. And really thinking about the role of Ministry of Food. And Ministry of Food, as many of you may recall, was actually a bit of a cry from Jamie in response to government kind of cutting funding. And it was about trying to be the solution to a Ministry of Food proposition, particularly in communities, but also in schools. And so we're really now using Ministry of Food as we kind of think about our future ambition as that umbrella for that mission. If every mealtime moment has the potential to bring such brilliance and benefit to people, how do we inspire and enable more people to experience the joys, the benefits of cooking, particularly if they're more nutritious, they're more sustainable, and they're more balanced? And so our ambition is to touch 1 million people and bring them that kind of power, the joy, the benefits of cooking. And we look at it through schools and the work we can do with schools. And particularly in schools, we've been very active around advocating for universal access to free school meals, which we're very excited about the announcement that Sadiq Khan has had for this year and the commitment for London. But as I mentioned, we also want to make sure that we're celebrating the successes. And I think that's why the Good School Food Awards was so important for us this year, and we will continue doing that year over year. We're also very proud that this year, in 2023, we have a pilot in 44 schools where we are introducing a Learn to Cook program. We're evaluating that. We're working with the University of Leeds to evaluate the success of that and hopefully scale that across schools across the UK. The community piece is also critical for us. So, it's really interesting. Jamie refers to them as the 10 lessons to save your life. Yeah. And it's essentially those 10 lessons that we use to adapt for school curriculum, to put into our community programming, but then also we've introduced a workplace proposition to allow us to really drive kind of an employee well-being proposition through Ministry of Food. So this kind of gives you the full snapshot of what Ministry of Food is about, but also what we're trying to achieve through that. And this is just a great kind of visual of one of the many award recipients from the Good School Food Awards. And what was incredible, and the intention, as I mentioned before, is we have 80,000 people across the UK that work in the school food system. And many of them are underappreciated, under-resourced. And so this was just an opportunity to say thank you and to shine a light on what great really looks like, and to hopefully inspire more of that. So there was 8 award winners. We had some incredible celebrity judges from Mary Berry to Joe Wicks, but we also brought in a number of expert panelists as well. A whole host of nominations. I mean, we were overwhelmed because it was sort of the inaugural year, but actually the outcome and what we were able to reach, 91.5 million in terms of reach, and such overwhelmingly positive sentiment. So this was actually the Food Educator of the Year award winner. And it was just an incredible moment when she received that from Jamie here in these offices. I will say there was not a dry eye in the place. And the last piece I just want to touch upon, and then we can have a little bit more of a discussion. I often talk a lot about the importance of, particularly for food brands and food businesses, and the role that food culture plays. And so often in the work that I've experienced, food culture is something that is tapped into from an innovation point of view, or how do we take this to customers and to consumers? But so often it starts from the inside. It's, building a food culture from the inside out. And I remember the first time entering into the Jamie Oliver offices, this is what you're welcomed with. This is the kitchen. George and Santos are, either they're putting out free lunch, the free breakfasts that we have, or these beautiful homemade subsidized lunches. And it's really making sure that our teams day to day are experiencing the joy of food and the positive impact that it brings them in their lives. So here's just a few examples of how we continue to nurture that within our business. So first, we do a number of inspirational speakers, and it could be on a whole range of topics, whether it's meals for menopause or neurodiversity. Obviously, we do quite a bit around food waste and a number of different sustainability topics. We're always bringing in guest chefs. So, Jamie has been a champion for emerging voices in food forever. And so we want to continue to bring that into the business, but also it's a way to inspire ourselves through new recipes, through new formats, through new cuisines. We have a really incredible program that we call Forward Fridays. And because we are such a unique business, that you have a media business, you have a product business, you have a restaurant business, you have incredible campaigning minds in the business, bringing these together with food stylists and storytellers, the ideation and the innovation that comes from bringing these brains into a room against a specific brief and a specific challenge is pretty mind-boggling. And so we've had some incredible ideas that we've built and designed that hopefully we'll be launching over the course of the next 12 months that many of you will be seeing, that have come from these types of sessions. But it's also volunteering days, and it's the way we celebrate B Corp and we celebrate our social impact kind of wins, and driving awareness around that within not only the business, but with our partners as well. I mentioned the role that our staff lunches and the food that we eat within the business plays for all of us. And they're very much meat reduced or meat free. And it's, again, just bringing that human connection, that love that it always feels like it's being served up with. And then we have a number of really important partnerships, whether it's the Creative Mentor Network or Creative Access, in order to really drive our DE&I kind of agendas and objectives across the business. So hopefully this gives you a bit of a sampling and a amuse-bouche of all the great things that we're proud to have achieved. But more excitingly, also, we're quite hungry to do more. And so we're very clear with, now that we have the 5-year plan, we have a very clear brand strategy. We're really committed to understanding and serving those needs of audiences across, so many different cohorts. That hopefully this gives you a little bit of a sampling of all that.
That's truly inspirational. I've got lots and lots of questions I want to ask you. We'll probably run out of time, but anyway, thank you. But if we can just dive into a little bit more detail. You touched on the successes to date within Ministry of Food, and touching 1 million people. How do you? I'm just intrigued. How do you go about measuring that impact? That's quite a tricky thing to do, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, interestingly enough, so we've been doing Ministry of Food predominantly in the UK. We've had some partners and some delivery programs in Australia as well. Yeah. So we've already had 100,000 people go through various Ministry of Food programs, mostly in that middle pillar of community. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The schools pillar that we're really going to be unlocking now. Yeah. So through the pilot program, 44 schools, I think we're looking at roughly 8,000 students that will go through that program. We want to be in up to 80% of the schools across the UK. We're then looking at extending those programs into Australia, but also into the US. Yeah. So that becomes tangible, because it's a curriculum we can measure, we can understand the lives that we're able to touch. But also, to your point on the measuring impact, that's why partnerships with the Leeds University in terms of understanding the impact then. So looking at confidence levels, looking at the, we even were measuring things like reduction of takeaways and increase in cooking at home. So there's a set criteria that we are laying down and outlining with University of Leeds to allow us to track not only numbers, but the impact associated with this curriculum.
And just building on that a little bit, there are many challenges and opportunities, but challenges with our current food system. What is it about kids and the next generation? I think I know the answer. I mean, we do quite a lot of work with chefs in schools ourselves, but what is it, I suppose, for Jamie, what is it about kids and schools? Why is that so important against all the other issues and challenges that you could potentially try and address?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of it is he has 5 kids. He's a dad first and foremost, and he really, really does look at if we can make that joy of cooking, the fun of cooking at a young age, introduce that to kids. It is sort of the reversal of, and I hated the terminology, but the kind of pester power of bringing that into homes. So oftentimes parents, the biggest barrier will be, my kids aren't going to eat the fruit and veg. Well, if all of a sudden the kids are like, oh my gosh, a sweet potato is better than a regular potato, and look at all, then it's engaging. And that's why the community and the school piece are really important to do hand in hand. But Jamie also wrote his first children's book with Billy this year. And with that, again, it was just bringing to life this notion of food, the discovery of food, being outdoors, being together, all of those kind of just relatively basic, but so important for kids to kind of re-engage.
In I was counting as we went through the presentation, I counted 8, if not more, uses of the word joy, and then your narrative over the top, many, many more instances. So why is joy so central to the brand and to Jamie and the proposition?
It's a great question. And it's a couple of things. First, it's Jamie. It's the values of the brand. As I talked about the personality, when you see the passion, when you feel like there's humor, there's just the fun of getting in the kitchen, and the expression around flavor and excitement and love. It's just what the brand kind of personality shines through. But you couple that, and I think with really the second part, which is so important, is, so much around kind of behavioral science and behavior change, to try to create change in people's lives, getting them in the kitchen more often or getting them to make healthier choices. If it feels like work, it's going to be a much harder outcome to achieve. If you make it fun, if you make it not feel like work, and you dial up the joy of it, the flavor, the taste, the deliciousness, the color, the brightness. I'll get him talking. You can see all the language. You're drawn to it. You're not worrying about whether this is healthy. It's just, and that invitation to be a part of something that feels better, that feels healthier, that feels a bit more sustainable, and to make it fun and joyful is really what we believe is the path.
And I'm getting it as we're talking. I'm grinning from ear to ear, and that joy just comes with that. I guess the association with Jamie and his work. But his work over 20 odd years ago was a key actual founding inspiration for us doing what we do today in our way. He has such a broad appeal. He has relevance to me and my parents and my 3 kids. What is it? How do you kind of characterize that enduring appeal and relevance of Jamie? I suppose you touched on the magic, but I want to try and unlock that a little bit more.
Yeah, no, again, another great question. I think, it's funny, when I shared the kind of brand strategy, and I talked about that sort of first reason to believe, that real evidence around Jamie as a problem solver and being one step ahead. That one step ahead piece, that in the natural intuition, it's a really hard. I mean, he naturally has that, and the business naturally has that as a result of it. And yes, there is an obsession with being aware of everything and always and being so connected into food culture and the networks that he and the business has developed, through the campaigning work, through the media work, through the restaurants business. So it is being very aware and staying on top of what people need. But I think because of that, there is also this just sort of youthful energy that the brand and the business and he has that is incredibly relatable. And so you often, and I've had this in conversations, within research, but just in friends and family and across the industry, is that he's taught generations how to cook.
Yeah, literally.
How many people will say, he taught me how to cook?
Yeah.
And to your point, it could be a 40-year-old or it could be a 20-year-old. And I think what's really exciting about the commitment we have from a school's point of view is it's just bringing another generation into the fold from that, and hopefully creating that relationship with people to say, yes, this is a brand and a business and a person who cares.
Yeah.
And is trying to play a role to make something better for us.
Obviously, restaurants have in the past, and from what you said, form a significant brand touch point. I guess a couple of questions around that. What role do you see restaurants playing in the Jamie Oliver brand going forward versus certainly probably from a more UK perspective to what we've seen in the past? And then I want to know if you can tell us a little bit more about Catherine Street, because that's super exciting.
It is super exciting. So restaurants have actually been a very critical part of the business. We have a very strong international franchise business. That idea of creating these rich food experiences, and they're always going to have the value central, very high food, animal welfare and food standards. We are very, very, we've got a small group of partners, franchise partners that we work with. We have long-term strategic relationships. It's really around balanced meals. And so all of those food values have always come to life through that franchise restaurant business. Going back into the UK was really important for Jamie and for the business. It's obviously his roots. It's where he comes from. He grew up in a pub in Essex. And so this is an opportunity to really just reassert those chef credentials. I mean, at the end of the day, Jamie is a chef. It's what he loves doing most. But doing this in the UK specifically with more precision, really looking at, for Catherine Street, it is about going back to his roots. It's about local suppliers. It's about best of British. It's about having fun with the menu. What are the things he loved that he's putting a little special twist on? And it's just becoming a part of the rich food hospitality tapestry of London again. And so there's a lot of excitement around that. It's launching officially at the end of November, and everybody is busy planning all of that. It's final stages, so it's very exciting.
Very exciting. I was going to ask you actually if you're able to give us some clues on when it opens, and so thank you for that.
Book now. You can book now. Booking on is open.
Fantastic.
It's my plug.
And is there going to be any ties to a particular cuisine? Some of us, depending on when you had the greatest proximity with Jamie, would associate him with Italian cooking. Is it wedded to Italian? Can you tell us a little bit more about those influences?
It's very much best of British cuisine.
Cool.
So more harkening back to him growing up in a pub and some of those classics reimagined, some new things, but no, there's not an Italian overlay to this.
Okay.
It'll be much more kind of British inspired, local, seasonal.
Super exciting. Can't wait to try. A couple of last questions for you, if I may. You touched on a couple of the elements in the presentation, but really just over the next 12, 24 months, what are those kind of exciting projects? What's next for the brand in amongst all the things that you've already told us?
Yes. So we have been very, very busy. So a lot of what we've been doing, obviously I mentioned the kind of laying down the strategy, the 5-year plan, kind of setting the vision for the brand, but now it's about delivering and activating on that. So really looking at a strong pipeline from a media point of view, what are the future books? What is the future content? We are, from a product perspective, very much looking at kind of new categories that we could be entering to continue to serve that mealtime moment. So there's hopefully going to be, I shouldn't say hopefully, definitely some exciting things that are launching early next year, spring next year. Also underpinning that will be a full kind of a reimagination of the digital platforms.
Yes.
So, and that's really important because we have such a strong social presence, but it's now really kind of bringing much more sophistication around CRM, data, technology into the business. And then continuing with the sort of growth plans that we have from a restaurant perspective, both internationally, and then really just making sure that we make Catherine Street shine, learn as much as possible, and connect the dots across the business. Ministry of Food continues to be, scaling that pilot. So we will see incredible success with the school pilot. We're going to enter year 2 of our Good School Food Awards, and then looking to enter into some new markets as well.
Very exciting.
We'll be busy.
Yeah, absolutely. My last question, I suppose, a little bit of a departure. We've talked an awful lot about Jamie and the Jamie Oliver brand and its purpose. I just wanted to close really by asking you, what about your purpose and I guess your deeper meaning? You're there in your role as Chief Commercial Officer, but what is it that gets you out of bed every day?
No, it's such a good question. I spent, as I mentioned, over nearly, I have to admit, over 25 years in the food industry across strategy, marketing, innovation. And I had the opportunity to work across so many different categories and types of brands and businesses and across many different markets. I kind of got to a point in my career where it was, where do I want to spend my next chapter where I can harness all of that good stuff that I've learned and seeing that, I was at Edelman doing I was the Global Food and Beverage Chair, and I was reporting on trust across the food system. And it really became such an eye-opener for me to say, how do we drive more trust into the food system? How can I work with a brand and one business to sort of really make a difference? And I've always said that food, working in food is a privilege, but it's also hard work to get it right. And so as I really kind of assessed where I can make the difference, and that values alignment is everything. There was a very short list, and this was at the top of my list. And so I had the privilege of doing some consulting work in the past with the Jamie Oliver Group. And so it really was, it was kind of, at first I thought it was a long shot, but once I got into the business and where the business was on its journey of transformation and the timing of me coming in, I had to prove myself. But I've never felt so passionate about being committed and really working to make a difference within a business that also is in turn trying to do the same. So I'm really, really pleased to be a part of the journey that this brand is on, and there is only exciting things ahead.
Amazing. Thank you so much for adding that little bit at the end. Really, really appreciate that. Megan, a huge thank you. I've got loads more questions that I could potentially ask you, but we're out of time. Thank you so much from Team The Food People and our 2023 Summit audience for sharing your expertise and knowledge and wisdom and some of the intimate workings of the Jamie Oliver brand, which I'm certain the entire audience has found thoroughly inspirational and thought-provoking. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.